What if I told you that what you're watching right now is not merely a video but a mirror? A mirror not of your face, but of your deepest mind, the very core of your being. You're not here by coincidence. Something within you, perhaps quiet but persistent, has drawn you to this moment. That voice within, that quiet stirring in your chest, is not a passing thought. It's a signal, a call to awaken to something you may have sensed your entire life. That there is more to this reality than what meets the eye. And you're not alone in thinking that. From ancient mystics to modern physicists, the most brilliant minds have whispered the same truth in different tongues. Everything begins with the mind. Let's start with something that sounds philosophical, yet is backed by modern science. Everything is vibration. The screen you're staring at right now, your hands resting on your lap, even the thoughts circling your mind, they're all made of energy, vibrating at different frequencies. This isn't metaphor. Quantum field theory, one of the most accurate scientific models we have, tells us that beneath every particle lies a field. Every electron, proton, and atom is not a tiny marble but a vibrating excitation of an invisible energy field. Nobel Prize-winning physicist Richard Feynman once said, "Everything is made of fields. The very fabric of reality hums with vibration. And if everything is vibrating, then your thoughts, which are energy, also vibrate, also create." This aligns astonishingly with an ancient teaching from the Hermetic tradition called Mentalism. That all is mind. Not in the poetic sense, but in the literal. The entire universe, this vast cosmos of galaxies, stars, and suns, exists within a grand field of consciousness. This principle is not about believing something abstract. It's about seeing how thought shapes matter, how intention precedes form. Consider the placebo effect. A patient takes a sugar pill, but because they believe it's medicine, their body heals. Science still debates the full mechanism, but it's undeniable. Belief, a mental state, alters biology. But let's bring this home to you. Think back to a moment in your life when you were filled with worry or fear. Did the world around you not seem darker, heavier, more hostile? Now remember a time when you were in love or filled with gratitude. Suddenly the same world felt lighter, more beautiful, more alive. The trees didn't change. The people didn't change. You did. Your perception shifted, and reality moved with it. In neuroscience, this is backed by studies of the reticular activating system, a bundle of nerves at the brainstem that filters incoming stimuli. It lets in what you focus on. So when your internal world shifts, your external experience quite literally follows. That's not spirituality. That's anatomy. This is why ancient philosophers and modern therapists both emphasize awareness. Because awareness is the first step to authorship. If you can observe your thoughts, you can direct them. If you can direct them, you can reshape your experience of reality. This is not some distant ideal. It's as practical as breathing. Every morning you have a choice. Do you let your mind run wild with old worries and media-fed noise? Or do you sit, even for 5 minutes, and breathe deeply while holding one intentional thought: I am aligned with peace, or I choose clarity today? Those are not just words. Repeated over time, they become neurological grooves. Neuroplasticity shows us that neurons that fire together, wire together. Which means the more you think a thought, the more likely you are to think it again. Thought becomes habit. Habit becomes identity. Identity becomes destiny. So what can you do with this? Start simply. Choose one thought in the morning, not a to-do list, not a problem, but one anchoring idea you want to embody. Write it down. Say it aloud. Return to it at noon. Whisper it again before sleep. This is not New Age fluff. This is cognitive restructuring. This is how stroke patients relearn movement, how veterans heal trauma, how elders like you can revitalize their sense of purpose. You've lived long enough to know that the outer world can be unpredictable. Health changes. Relationships shift. The country, the culture, the technology moves faster than ever. But there's one frontier that is still yours to master: your inner world. Your thoughts, your perceptions, your meaning-making power. The Kybalion teaches that the mind is the builder of reality. Science confirms that perception sculpts biology. And your life from this moment forward can reflect this truth not as a theory, but as a living practice. Now take a breath. Let it fill your lungs fully. As you exhale, imagine releasing everything that no longer serves you. That breath you just took, it was your choice. That choice is power. And that power is yours right now. Long before our modern world named gravity, before atoms were split and telescopes revealed galaxies, the ancient philosophers already whispered a truth that now echoes through both science and spirit. Reality is governed by law. Not human law, not social contracts or traffic signs, but deep, invisible principles that move through everything from the rising of tides to the rhythm of your breath. These Hermetic principles, once guarded in the temples of Egypt and passed through cryptic scrolls, are now finding validation in laboratories and classrooms across the globe. One of the most foundational is the law of cause and effect. The simple to grasp, yet transformative to live by. Nothing happens without a reason. No thought, no feeling, no action exists in isolation. Everything is connected in an endless chain of influence. In science, we see this clearly in physics. Newton's third law states that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. This isn't just for bouncing balls or rocket launches, it applies to your daily life. When you choose to speak a kind word, when you practice gratitude, when you nourish your body with care, the effects ripple far beyond that single moment. Likewise, when you let resentment simmer, when you consume toxic media, or speak harshly to yourself, those vibrations don't vanish. They linger, they accumulate, and they return. Imagine planting a garden. Each seed you bury holds the potential for life, but only if the soil, sunlight, and water are in harmony. Now imagine your thoughts and emotions as seeds. The loving ones bloom, the bitter ones fester. Most of us have planted without knowing it, tending to habits that grew out of fear or pain. But here's the good news. You can begin planting new seeds today. Neuropsychologist Dr. Rick Hansen explains that the brain is like Velcro for the negative and Teflon for the positive, meaning we are biologically wired to cling to negative events. But through conscious effort, through reflection, journaling, meditation, we can override this bias. This is cause and effect in action. Each time you choose to focus on what uplifts rather than what drains, you're not just shifting your mood. You're rewiring your brain. You're shaping your future. Even in the natural world, this principle plays out. Consider epigenetics, the study of how behaviors and environment can change the way your genes express themselves. Scientists now know that our choices can switch certain genes on or off, influencing everything from immune health to mood. That means the way you think, the way you feel, and even the way you respond to stress directly affects your biology. The mind is not a passenger in your body. It's a sculptor. When ancient Hermetic texts say, as within, so without, this is what they mean. You are not simply reacting to life. You are generating it from the inside out. So how can you begin working with this law right now in a tangible way? Start by becoming a witness to your patterns. For 1 week, keep a cause and effect journal. In the morning, write down a clear intention, something simple, like, today I will speak with kindness, or today I will move with patience. At night, reflect. How did that intention play out? What shifted in your energy, your conversations, your choices? You will begin to see the thread. And once you see it, you can weave it. If something is not working in your life, a strained relationship, chronic stress, feelings of stagnation, instead of blaming fate, look inward. Ask, what seed did I plant here? What thought or belief have I been watering that led to this? This isn't about guilt. It's about power. If you caused it, you can change it. Even the smallest action has impact. Smiling at a stranger, pausing to take a deep breath before reacting, drinking more water, stretching for 5 minutes each morning, these are not trivial. They are micro-causes that, over time, shape a different life. Think of it as spiritual physics. You don't need to control everything around you. You simply need to become intentional with what you put into motion. Like a skilled archer who studies the wind and draws with precision, you begin to live with aim rather than drift. The Hermeticists were not fortune-tellers. They were engineers of consciousness. And they taught that when you understand cause and effect, you no longer live in confusion. You begin to see meaning in every moment, not as punishment or reward, but as feedback. Reality, like a mirror, reflects what you emit. So I invite you today not to believe blindly, but to test it. Choose one habit of mind to shift. Maybe it's a subtle complaint you often repeat, or a fear you always assume is true. Replace it with a new inner stance. Try it for 3 days. Observe what happens. And if your heart is still skeptical, that's fine. Because the law doesn't require belief to operate. Like gravity, it works whether you accept it or not. But once you start working with it consciously, life becomes less of a mystery and more of a masterpiece in progress. One that you and only you are painting stroke by stroke. Life does not unfold in a straight line. It rises and falls, sways and shifts, much like the ocean's tides or the swing of a grandfather clock. This is not chaos. This is rhythm, and it is one of the most misunderstood truths of human experience. We are taught to fear the lows, to resist the dips in energy, mood, or momentum, as if they are signs of failure or weakness. But what if they are not? What if those low moments are not setbacks, but sacred pauses built into the very rhythm of existence? Ancient Hermetic teachings, confirmed now by biological and psychological science, tell us that everything flows in cycles. Your breath moves in and out. Your heart beats in a rhythmic pulse. The planet turns with seasons that bring both bloom and barrenness. This cyclical pattern is not separate from you. It is you. And the more you understand it, the more gracefully you can live within it. In neuroscience, researchers have identified what they call ultradian rhythms, natural cycles in our bodies that rise and fall roughly every 90 to 120 minutes, affecting energy, focus, and performance. This means that even in a single day, you move through waves of high clarity and low energy. Yet most of us push through the dips with caffeine or guilt, ignoring the body's call for a pause. The result? Burnout, irritability, a constant sense of being off. But the law of rhythm invites us to honor these waves instead of fighting them. When you feel low, it doesn't mean something is wrong. It means it is time to rest, reflect, reset. This same wisdom exists in financial markets, where seasoned investors speak of market corrections, natural declines after periods of growth. Those who panic sell in a dip often lose. Those who understand the rhythm hold steady and even prepare to plant new seeds. So too in your life. Emotional valleys are not barren lands. They are soil-rich waiting for new intentions. Let's make this practical. If today you feel heavy, slow, or uncertain, take 10 minutes to walk in nature, without your phone. Let your pace be unhurried. Listen to the birds, feel the wind. This isn't about fixing the low, but meeting it with attention. In psychology, this is supported by research into mindfulness-based stress reduction, a method developed by Dr. John Kabat-Zinn. The data is clear. Awareness without judgment changes the brain, reducing activity in the amygdala, the fear center, and strengthening regions tied to resilience and emotional regulation. What the ancient sages called riding the wave is now visible on brain scans. And here's something beautiful. Rhythm not only explains the lows, it empowers the highs. When you're in a moment of clarity, of deep motivation or joy, don't take it for granted. Use it. That is your time to act, to create, to plant the seeds that will sustain you in the next valley. Write the letter you've postponed. Call someone you love. Begin the project you've dreamed about. Think of it like gardening. You do not plant when the frost arrives. You plant in spring. But the garden also needs winter. It rests. It regathers. And so must you. There's an ancient Greek idea, later echoed by Plato, that the soul evolves in spirals. Meaning even when you return to the same emotional terrain, you're not truly back where you started. You are revisiting it from a higher perspective. The grief you feel at 70 is not the grief you felt at 30. The sadness might echo familiar notes, but now you hold deeper wisdom, more spaciousness. This spiral view of life is deeply empowering. It reminds you that growth includes circles, and returning does not mean regressing. So here's an invitation. Create your rhythm journal. For 1 week, track your energy and mood in simple morning and evening reflections. Note what lifted you, what depleted you, and how you responded. Over time, you'll begin to see patterns your own tide chart. And then you can begin to live not reactively, but rhythmically. You will know when to speak and when to listen, when to act and when to wait. This is not passivity. This is harmony. And harmony, unlike control, creates lasting peace. The great jazz pianist Thelonious Monk once said, "It's the space between the notes that makes the music." The same is true of your life. The pauses, the silences, the low points, they are not interruptions. They are part of the song. When you understand rhythm, you no longer feel broken during the slow seasons. You begin to dance with them. And in that dance, something timeless awakens within you, not just knowledge, but wisdom. Not just survival, but beauty. And that beauty, quietly pulsing within the rhythm of your breath, is the music your life has always meant to play. Purpose is one of those words that can feel heavy as we grow older, like a book we've carried for years but never fully opened. We are taught early that purpose is something fixed, a singular calling, a grand achievement carved in stone. But what if purpose isn't a destination? What if it's movement itself? Imagine you're standing in an open field, and every time your heart stirs with curiosity, a small glowing ball appears in the distance. That ball could be a new interest, a place to visit, a person to call, or simply a new way of thinking. You begin to walk toward it. That walk gives you energy. You feel alive again. But halfway there, another ball appears, slightly brighter, pulling your attention in a new direction. This, my friend, is not distraction. This is the soul's way of evolving. Purpose, as revealed in both ancient Hermetic thought and modern psychology, is not fixed. It is adaptive. It grows as you do. Let's look at how this is supported in science. Neuroplasticity tells us that the brain can rewire itself throughout life, even into our later decades. Every time you learn something new, explore a different perspective, or shift an old belief, your neural pathways change. Dr. Norman Doidge, author of The Brain That Changes Itself, documented numerous cases where people in their 70s and 80s not only recovered lost abilities but also developed entirely new ones. The takeaway is clear: your mind is not done growing. And if your brain is still transforming, then so is your purpose. What once thrilled you may no longer fit. That's not failure. That's evolution. The Hermetic law of vibration teaches that everything moves, everything changes frequency. And so do you. Holding on to an old dream out of habit can sometimes be more harmful than letting it go. Let me offer you a simple story to bring this alive. A woman in her late 60s had spent her whole life in finance. Upon retiring, she felt lost. For decades, her identity was tied to her title. One day, she started volunteering at a local animal shelter. It wasn't glamorous, but it lit something in her. Over time, she began organizing fundraisers, advocating for animal rights, and eventually started a small nonprofit. Did she fail to fulfill her original purpose? Or did she allow it to evolve? In truth, her earlier path gave her the skills, the discipline, and the confidence she needed for this new chapter. Nothing was wasted. This is what Hermes meant when he said the path reveals the seeker. You do not need to have the whole picture to begin. You only need to say yes to what feels alive in you today. Now let's bring this home in practice. Take a quiet moment today and reflect on what has recently sparked your interest, even subtly. It might be a restlessness in your chest, a book you've been drawn to, or an urge to learn a new skill. Write it down. Don't analyze it. Don't justify it. Just acknowledge it. This is your next little ball. Then ask yourself, what is one small step I can take toward this? Not a leap, a step. Read the first chapter. Make the phone call. Sign up for the class. These movements, however small, are sacred. They are how purpose breathes. In developmental psychology, Erik Erikson described the final stage of life as a conflict between ego integrity and despair. In other words, do we look back on our life with a sense of coherence and continued possibility, or do we feel it has all ended? Purpose, as fluid and responsive as it is, can guide us toward integrity. Not because it fulfills a checklist, but because it connects us to life itself. A life of purpose is not one without questions. It is one in which we remain open to asking them. That openness, that willingness to throw the next ball, keeps us vibrant. So today, release the idea that your purpose must look impressive or linear. Purpose doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it's just a nudge to plant herbs on the windowsill, or learn how to play the harmonica, or mentor a young person who reminds you of your younger self. Don't worry if it makes sense to others. If it brings you into motion, if it connects you with your own breath, it matters. You are not finished. Life is still reaching toward you, and your response, your yes, your step forward is the truest expression of purpose there is. Imagine for a moment that reality is not a solid wall you walk into, but a river you can learn to navigate. Most people live like logs caught in the current, tossed and turned by forces they do not understand. But those who observe closely, who learn the flow of the water, can move with grace, even upstream. This is not just ancient metaphor. It is the foundation of both Hermetic wisdom and emerging scientific understanding. The world around you responds to the world within you. This is not poetic optimism. It is practical law. The Hermetic teachings outline 7 fundamental principles that shape everything we experience. These principles are not superstitions. They are patterns. They are the hidden architecture of existence. And once you see them, you begin to understand that life is not happening to you, but through you. Let's walk through each one, not as theory, but as tools you can apply today. First, the principle of mentalism. Everything begins in the mind. What you think, you eventually live. Neuroscientific studies show that the brain does not fully distinguish between imagined and real experiences. Athletes who mentally rehearse their movements activate the same regions of the brain as when they physically perform. This means your consistent thoughts shape your biology and your behavior. Start each morning with intention. Choose a phrase like, "I am grounded and creative today," and repeat it aloud. Let it guide your attention. What you feed the mind, the body begins to build. A single affirmation, spoken daily, can reroute decades of limiting beliefs. Next is correspondence. As within, so without. Your outer world is a reflection of your inner world. If your home feels chaotic, look within. If your relationships are strained, observe your self-talk. Clinical psychology shows that people with clearer internal narratives often maintain healthier boundaries and environments. One easy application is to bring order to something small each day. Clean your desk. Water your plants. Prepare a nourishing meal. These are not chores. They are acts of alignment. When the micro becomes intentional, the macro begins to respond. Then we move to vibration. Everything in the universe vibrates, including your thoughts and emotions. Research in biofield science and heart-brain coherence from the HeartMath Institute reveals that positive emotional states like gratitude and appreciation create more harmonious physiological rhythms, improving health and decision-making. Create a short daily ritual to shift your vibration. It could be as simple as 5 minutes of deep breathing, listening to a piece of music that lifts your spirit, or writing down 3 things you're grateful for. Do it consistently and you will begin to notice a subtle, yet powerful lift in your energy. The principle of polarity teaches us that everything has 2 poles. Hot and cold, joy and sorrow, courage and fear. These are not opposites, but degrees on the same scale. If you find yourself stuck in a negative emotion, do not suppress it. Shift its frequency. Anger can become advocacy. Grief can become compassion. This is not emotional denial. It is emotional transformation. Viktor Frankl, Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, wrote that between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our power to choose. Practice that pause. Ask yourself, how can I move this emotion just 1 degree higher today? The principle of rhythm reminds us that life moves in cycles. Just as the tide comes in and out, so too do moments of clarity and confusion. Studies on circadian and ultradian rhythms show that the body and brain move in waves throughout the day and life. Honor your personal rhythm. On days of low energy, give yourself permission to rest without guilt. On days of clarity, take bold action. Life is not about always climbing. It is about learning when to climb and when to breathe. Cause and effect brings us back to responsibility. Nothing happens without a seed being planted. The choices you make today create the reality you meet tomorrow. This is not punishment or reward. It is design. Start observing your patterns. If you feel stuck, trace back the chain of thought, decision, or habit that may have created that loop. Then choose to plant something new. Replace the nightly news with inspiring reading. Replace self-criticism with small celebrations of progress. The results won't be instant, but they will be inevitable. Finally, the law of gender teaches us that within all things exist both active and receptive forces. In practice, this means knowing when to act and when to listen, when to speak and when to reflect. This balance is visible in nature, in art, and in the creative process itself. Before every great painting, there is stillness. Before every leap forward, a moment of incubation. If you're facing a big decision, practice balancing both aspects. First, listen deeply to your intuition, then act with focus. Wisdom is born in the union of insight and implementation. Each of these laws is not a demand, but an invitation. They do not require belief. They require presence. Begin by choosing one principle that speaks to you most. Practice it intentionally for 1 week. Observe what shifts both around you and within you. This is the path of the modern alchemist, not someone who turns lead into gold, but someone who turns unconscious patterns into conscious creation. At any age, this is possible. At any moment, you can align your being with these natural laws and discover that life, when seen through the eyes of understanding, is not random. It is rhythmic, intelligent, and full of meaning waiting to be shaped by your hands.